Hello and welcome. This presentation is cricketing themed and will centre around coaching younger children. We hope that you, the great sport coaching audience, enjoy. In the following presentation, we, a group of young academic coaches, are aiming to deliver a presentation that will significantly enhance the quality and effectiveness of your community of coaches. As academic young coaches ourselves, we are aware there has been somewhat of a gap between research, practice and delivery. Ultimately, our aim is to bridge the theoretical gap in coaching, arming you and your cohort with the tools to deliver high-quality learning. To do so, we will do the following. Our overarching aims and objectives. We are aiming to provide a sufficient, detailed analysis and description of the coaching interventions and/or knowledge, show and explain our knowledge and recommendations, incorporate evidence and writing so that you, the practitioners, can make better informed choices, explain how you can take your coaching further, e.g. exploring more reading and research, provide evidence around the connections between coaching and athletes' learning.
In the following presentation, we are aiming to answer 3 theoretical questions. What is important in coaching/coaching? What are we trying to create in our young players and athletes? How is coaching evolving? By breaking down these key questions, the great sports coaching cohort should be able to better grasp and understand modern coaching. Before we begin addressing these questions, it is important to make sure we are all on the same page. To do so, we are quickly providing a definition of a coach and why we think coaching is important. Whilst it is almost impossible to truly define a coach, we have tried to capture the key aspects. A coach has a tremendous influence on the physical and psychological development of their athletes. Short 2005, page 29. The coach's goal should be to create an effective learning environment, promoting the values of sport and encouraging them on and off the court. These roles and responsibilities of a coach stretch beyond a training session, match, etc., making it impossible to predict what the role will involve and additionally evolved into. Nash 2015. In summary, coaching is a vast field and very complex undertaking. Further research is needed to truly understand the complexities and experiences faced by coaches on a daily basis. Bush and Silk 2010. So why is coaching important? The research on coaching's importance is vast, partly due to coaching's many facets. However, myself and my team feel that one reason stands above the rest. One key role that coaches play is facilitating development. Benton, 1999. In this role, the coach helps the learner organize his or her thinking and develop a greater capacity to manage themselves. Similarly, coaches have a shared passion to help others grow and perform, inspiring and motivating their players. Peterson, 1996. Younger players, like your coaching audience, are particularly susceptible to coaching influences, thus making coaching even more important than we might think. Short, 2005.
What is a learning environment? Learning environments are, in coaching sciences, a complex topic. There are many contributing factors, both internal and external. As you can see on the screen, we have selected 2 factors, together alongside many other factors. Motivational climate and positive relationships can contribute to an effective learning environment. There are 2 types of motivational climate, task and ego orientation. It has been suggested that the motivational climate can be strongly influenced by the coach's behavior. An individual's goal orientation is their predisposition to be task or ego focused, combined with how the individual perceives the coach's behavior and how this would impact upon their perceptions of the motivation climate. Morgan, 2017. It is clear that not every player will respond in the same way to specific training conditions. Coaches who understand this and are able to tailor individualized motivational climates will likely gain the greatest benefits from their players. Empowering individuals to be part of the learning process is a key predictor of an adaptive psychological environment that can support the broader psychological needs of those individuals for whom they are responsible. The ideal coaching and athlete relationship should be a balance of a coach empowering the athlete to take control and the athlete being willing to take responsibility. The coach's role is to guide the athlete to a stage where balance is achieved. If we had one word to summarize what we are trying to create in our young players, it would be freedom. As we will discuss later, we believe that, because of many reasons, modern coaching and learning has become too automatic. To answer this question, we will touch on the theory and research behind coaching, beginning with pedagogy. Pedagogy is interested in the ways children and young people can be supported to learn sport-specific skills, and importantly, how that learning can be structured and managed to ensure they gain a wider personal, social, and health benefits from participation. It is, in essence, a teaching lens. In sports coaching, there are two main forms of pedagogical approaches, linear and non-linear. Linear approaches are more structured and typically traditional. In today's presentation, we will be focusing and presenting a non-linear learning approach. Non-linear approaches are centered around the learner's interaction with the environment. Learning and performance improvement are seen as emerging from the interaction of key constraints.
The constraints-led approach. The constraints-led approach, or CLA, is one such non-linear pedagogy. We have selected the CLA for its flexibility and relative simplicity. Whilst the theory behind the approach is complex and vast, it won't directly affect your coaching experience, and so we will only touch on it lightly. The CLA was introduced in motor learning to assist with the development of skills and techniques through the manipulation of specific tasks, individuals, or environmental constraints. Constraints-led training is a variation from traditional training regimes, providing athletes with a greater representation of the sporting environment in order to train specific match skills. Renshaw and Holder, 2010. Newell, 1986, noted three interacting constraints that determine optimal coordination and control of any given activity: performer constraints, environmental constraints, and task constraints. He added that if any of these factors changed, the result in movement changes too. In simpler terms, the method presents the learner with a series of constraints in the training session. By changing these constraints, the coach can directly influence the learning. However, the onus is still on the player to solve the issue and find a solution. Ultimately, this approach promotes problem solving and risk taking, allowing players to show off their sporting identity. As mentioned before, the theory underpinning the CLA can be confusing. Therefore, we will only briefly describe the dynamic systems theory, or DST. Thelen, 2005, notes that it is a flexible, time-dependent and emergent view of behavioural change. The DST states that behavioural patterns, including learning, derive from our interactions with the environment and aren't centrally stored like other learning theories. Chow et al., 2011. DST is a critical arm and underpins many approaches to learning, including the CLA itself. To better understand the DST, we have adopted the ball-in-hole analogy. As shown in the diagram on your screens, when the red ball falls in the hole, movement is created. By learning and creating more holes, the player-athlete has a greater range of available movements. Whilst this theory is more complex with terms like eco-niches, this explanation is designed to be simple, as we wanted to provide some background knowledge to help bridge the gap.
The argument for not being too heavily reliant on textbook techniques when coaching children and allowing them to develop through finding solutions to problems on their own, we believe can be shown in the sport of cricket and arguably two of the best cricketers to ever play the game, Don Bradman and Steve Smith's batting technique. Glazier et al. Argued that Don Bradman's successful career came from his unorthodox batting technique. He gripped the bat in an unusual manner, which Schindler, 2003, concluded was the major factor for his ability to score runs on a regular basis. The success of an unorthodox batting technique can be shown in the modern era by Steve Smith. Smith is an Australian cricketer who arguably has one of the strangest techniques on the international stage. Saying this, similar to Bradman, he discovered a technique that provided him with the best opportunity to score runs. Though the likes of Bradman and Smith have been so successful, the conventional coaching manual has not adopted or supported the discovery and the use of unorthodox approaches to the game. We believe that Bradman's technique, developed through his drill of striking a fast-moving golf ball with a stump, not only helped his hand-eye coordination, but also, as Schindler 2003 argues, also improved his balance and foot movement at the same time. The constraints set in this drill by Bradman himself, such as a smaller ball and a smaller hitting surface, we believe, as shown in the literature, is a key factor for his success. This is because by setting constraints, he was able to develop a technique that got the best results, even if it was not the most technically sound, and relay the movements to the traditional form of the game where he evidently saw results. This is something we believe that as coaches at the Great Sports Coaching Company should adopt in their community sessions for young children. For example, setting drills in which you can explain to the participants they have to hit the ball through a certain target no matter the line of the ball, creating a constraint in which a learner has to develop their own method in which to manipulate the ball into the gap. Other learning approaches will not allow this, highlighting the unique ability of the CLA approach. So how is coaching evolving? As we touched upon before, we believe coaching has become too automatic. We would argue that the rise in evolution of technology has caused this growth in autonomy. Modern coaches have become seduced by the stats and numbers, overanalyzing expected goals in football, tackling power in rugby, shots made in cricket, and many more. While stats and tech can be very useful, they must be used in moderation. As you can see on this infographic on the screen, data has become ingrained in modern sport, and cricket is no exception. The recent influence of technology to sport, especially coaching, has had a monumental effect on athletes and how sport is played. As you can see from the comments on the slide, made in an interview found in Lisbon 2015, the introduction of technology has affected many athletes in many varying manners.
Since its introduction, there have been many examples of coaching environments shifting towards a climate where surveillance is at the forefront. Many coaches have embraced new technologies with open arms, overlooking the positives and negatives that come with them. Below, we have created a figure highlighting the areas of technology that we feel are positive and negative. The positives include that it can provide a benchmark for performance. By providing a benchmark, players can be assessed against one another to create a healthy competition. Similarly, the data can be used to gauge a player's attention or effort levels. It also provides an incentive for players to perform. Motivation itself is a complex topic. However, it could be argued that players may be motivated by stats both intrinsically and extrinsically. For example, intrinsically by beating their peers and extrinsically if they are competing for a prize. It will also help identify strengths and weaknesses. Assessing a player's strengths and weaknesses will allow them better use of their development time, for example, working in the gym. However, there are also negatives. For example, it can create excessive pressure. Athletes are now under increased pressure to perform well and post good statistics. In particular, this has been influenced by technology such as ESPN Cricket Info and Play Cricket sites, where even at recreational club level, every aspect of cricket is ranked against one another. It can also create stress and worry amongst players. Building upon the idea of pressure, athletes' mental well-beings are now being compromised for stats and data. Research suggests that athletes, particularly at the elite level, dread the thought of being publicly shamed in front of their peers for perceived poor stats. It can also be argued that stats and technology can become more important than the game itself. We believe this to be the biggest pitfall of technology in sports. It's not a technological problem, but rather a side effect of overusage. In sports like cricket, technology engulfs athletes' lives. The negative side of this being that athletes get no downtime or relief away from sport, as they are always reminded of the challenges they need to achieve through technology such as smartphones, tablets, comparative statistics sites, and wearable technology. In the same vein, athletes don't focus on the game, focusing on the stats instead. In some cases, it can be argued that the introduction of technology has taken away from the purity of sport itself, the ability to express yourself and enjoy the game. Instead, athletes are scared of getting bad stats, so will not take risks. This is something we believe shouldn't happen. Ultimately, it's harming the spectator experience. In younger children, like your audience, this is especially important. Children should feel free to express themselves in sports, enjoying the purity of the game. To summarise, if it wasn't obvious already, we believe that tech has had positive and negative impacts on sport. It is difficult to assess. Calling the effect positive or negative is too sweeping. Instead, we argue this. The technology isn't problematic. However, our usage and consumption of tech outside of sport has caused an over-reliance. Coaches' over-reliance on technology is what's caused all of these negative impacts.
Pulling the theory together, our recommendations. We recommend that you, as coaches, promote learning over performance. We want athletes to be free-thinking, developing their athletic and holistic skills. We don't want athletes to become autonomous, i.e. robotic. We believe this stunts the athlete's growth outside of sports. Whilst it can help sporting performance, we believe, in regards to autonomy and being robotic, at this grassroots level, development and retention are more important than results. So what does this mean? In application, and to keep it simple, we recommend that you, in accordance with this PowerPoint, begin by creating a good learning environment. After that, you could adopt a constraints-led approach. Within this constraints-led approach, or wider non-linear pedagogy, you could use different teaching methods like TGFU or teaching games for understanding. And finally, most importantly, we recommend that you use technology sparingly. Applying our recommendations, a few examples of some constraints. When incorporating your own constraints into your training sessions, you should consider performer constraints. Physical and mental factors such as technical skills, attentional control, and intrinsic motivation. You could also consider environmental constraints, physical and cultural factors such as external conditions, i.e. weather, the pitch, etc., and family and friends. And finally, task constraints, game-related factors such as the rules, equipment, and the relative state of the game. These are a few sources we would recommend if you want to expand your knowledge.
As we mentioned right at the start, the purpose of this presentation, besides helping you on your coaching journey, was to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Here are some of the academic sources we have used throughout. If you're interested in reading around coaching more, please feel free to read along in your own time. As stated on the screen, these are just a few of our examples. If you want to access the full list, please do get in touch.
Thank you for your time and patience today. Apologies that we couldn't deliver this session in person. Here are a few key messages to take home. Every coach, regardless of style, needs to create a good learning environment. Learning is a non-linear process. Try different styles, craft your own research-based pedagogy, don't be seduced by technology, but ultimately experiment. There is no right or wrong way to coach. Thank you very much for your time.